maybe if you can, for those folks out there who are not already immersed in the world of meditation and mindfulness, what exactly does that mean, and how does one get started?
I love what you're saying there because, everyone takes their own journey into solitude and silence and stillness or calm. And, there's so many different ways to experience that and to find that, to the portal through to that space. For me, what I teach is predominantly focused around a particular modality or method of transcending thoughts, feelings, and physicality. And that's a deep meditation program called Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation. And for anyone looking to experience that state of absolute stillness and silence and inner bliss and inner calm, I find that that's probably one of the most efficient and most effective methods to get there. There's a lot of beautiful meditation techniques out there with absolute respect, to honor them all. But I find a lot of them keep us in the realm of thinking. So guided meditations, visualization meditations, gratitude meditations, chakra healing meditations. They're all beautiful modalities that have some benefit, but they still keep us in that active mental state where the mind is still moving. It's still having some activity. And there's still the deep awareness that that's you that's having the meditation. That's you that's having the float tank. That's you that's going for the walk. There's a whole other dimension, another realm that we can access. This is what we call transcendence.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show where military mindset meets the spirit of the puppy. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Today's guest is a special case. He is one of the rare people who has helped change the lives of thousands of people, not by what he says, but in fact, leading them towards silence. Of course, my podcast guest is not a mute. In fact, he's a world-renowned speaker, author, coach, and an award-winning film producer. But his message is all about the power of silence, stillness, meditation, and reflection. Interestingly, he got his start in the chaotic world of finance as a stock and bond broker on a trading floor. In spite of this, or perhaps driven by it, he sought out peace and wellness from many of the top meditation experts in the world. What he's learned and subsequently shared in his work has changed the lives of untold thousands of people. Listen closely, and perhaps he can help you to change yours. Please welcome my friend, Tom Cronin. Tom, how are you?
Man, it's a great introduction. Thank you for that summary. It's great to be here. I'm honored.
I am honored to have you. And I think that it was my friend Ryan Sprague who had me on his podcast, and he honored me with a really great introduction. And since that day, I really try to do the best that I can to find out who I'm talking to and try to let the listener know and the viewer know exactly what they can expect to get from the conversation. So, Tom, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
So at the moment, I'm a father of two wonderful children, a husband of a beautiful wife of 30 years, and I'm a meditation teacher, a transformational coach, probably working with sort of conscious leaders who are trying to make that transition out of their sort of day jobs and get into conscious leadership, setting up their businesses. And I run retreats, do a lot of corporate training programs, working with companies like Amazon and Coca-Cola and Qantas, Union Bank of Switzerland, helping their staff find less stress and more stillness or calm and greater productivity, greater success. So a lot of it's sort of focused around either me helping other people with their mental health and getting into that calmer state, or helping train people to train other people to do that as well.
That's really great. I'm not somebody who's done a lot of meditation, but I do spend a lot of time on what I call solo missions. So I'll be hiking alone with the dogs, or I took a float yesterday. I do float tanks. And so I think I've sort of found a backdoor into it. But maybe if you can, for those folks out there who are not already immersed in the world of meditation and mindfulness, what exactly does that mean, and how does one get started?
I love what you're saying there because, everyone takes their own journey into solitude and silence and stillness or calm. And, there's so many different ways to experience that and to find that, to the portal through to that space. For me, what I teach is predominantly focused around a particular modality or method of transcending thoughts, feelings, and physicality. And that's a deep meditation program called Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation. And for anyone looking to experience that state of absolute stillness and silence and inner bliss and inner calm, I find that that's probably one of the most efficient and most effective methods to get there. There's a lot of beautiful meditation techniques out there with absolute respect, to honor them all. But I find a lot of them keep us in the realm of thinking. So guided meditations, visualization meditations, gratitude meditations, chakra healing meditations. They're all beautiful modalities that have some benefit, but they still keep us in that active mental state where the mind is still moving. It's still having some activity. And there's still the deep awareness that that's you that's having the meditation. That's you that's having the float tank. That's you that's going for the walk. There's a whole other dimension, another realm that we can access. This is what we call transcendence. And in Sanskrit, it's got a word called turiya, which means the fourth state. So we've got thinking, we've got dream state, we've got deep sleep state, but then we've got this fourth state, which is being awake and conscious and aware, but not having a thought. And this place is a very unbounded, formless, deep quiet, a deep serenity, but it doesn't have a localized experience. You can't say, I'm here having this experience. There's just having the experience. And so many things happen when we arrive in this experience, in this state. Physiologically, our body drops into a profoundly deep state of rest. And this was the shift that happened for me. When we get into that deep physiological rest, when the mind is still, the nervous system is still, it's considered 4 times deeper than sleep. And there's a deep healing process that happens in the body. So for me, before meditation, I was riddled with addictions, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, insomnia, agoraphobia. My nervous system, my physiology, my mind was completely blown out of the water by the things that I was doing with it, which is where a lot of the world's at. When I started to access this state, all of that anomaly, all of that imbalance just simply just melted away. I mean, there's this intelligence in the body to correct and heal when we get into those deep states of restfulness. And so that was the really powerful healing process that happens in the body. But then we also expand our mind. We get out of the conditioned mindset. So anyone listening will have a code in their mindset, which is a series of belief systems. Now, a lot of those belief systems that we operate in our lives, think of it like the software in your phone. You've got a hardware, which is the apparatus, and then the software, which drives the apparatus. So we have our physical form, which we go to the gym to work out, but we've got this software. Now we have a code in that software, and most of us are carrying a code that could be generations old, that's passed down from mum and dad, nan and pop, great granddad and great grandma, and all the way back. And some of that code can be many, many hundreds of years old around money, relationships, sex, religion, all sorts of things. And so when we transcend that code, we access a field of wisdom or knowledge or awareness that then has the capacity to look at the code rather than be the code and start to address the code and correct the code if we feel inclined to do so. And that's where things really get interesting.
There's a lot in there. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things at the very end there that you're reminding me of is sort of like getting past your ego, right? Like stepping beside
absolutely.
that. Because I feel like a lot of times when folks try to work on themselves, it's very difficult when they're still in themselves, right? And certainly there are different ways to experience that. And I personally can relate to that for sure. I want to take a step back though, because I did mention it in the beginning, but I'd like to hear it in your own words. The man that I'm talking to today is probably very different than the man that started on this journey. Tell me about that guy. Tell me about your entrepreneurial origin story. Tell me about your transcendental meditation origin story. Who were you and what were you doing before you found this?
Yeah, so winding back the clock, I just finished school, went backpacking around the world, took a year off before uni, came back from traveling around the world, which is a bit of a rite of passage for Australians because we're so far away. We sort of take a whole year off to do the backpack thing.
Yeah.
And when I got back, I had a few months to fill in before uni and I just applied for a bunch of jobs, Saturday morning paper, wrote off a CV off to a bunch of jobs and landed one on a trading room floor. Now, I had no idea what this was, this world. I was going to do a degree in journalism, but I landed this job and I was going to quit after a few months once I saved some money and then go to uni. But the money was ridiculous. And it was this huge Wolf of Wall Street type trading room floor. And it was actually the same year that Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, started his career as a broker. I started mine, 1987. And it was the year that also Bud Fox and Gordon Gekko from Wall Street were born. And it was the year that Sherman McCoy from Bonfire the Vanities, which is also a bond broker, who considered himself the master of the universe. So there was this sort of huge amounts of greed and fever around the finance markets, extreme hedonism. Before long, I was just into multiple 6-figure salaries, sports cars, corporate Amex cards to take clients out up till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, partying like it's 1999, even though it was 1987, 1988, 1989. And it was just the wild, wild west these days. And it was very much like Wolf of Wall Street. I got goosebumps when I saw the film because it was so accurately portrayed of what a trading room floor was like back then. It was pretty out of control. Every day there was some crazy shit going down.
Just to break it, I heard that they toned it down. I've heard him say that they actually turned it down because the movie producers thought it was too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you on public air what was going on.
Of course.
It was wild. So luckily things have changed and we've come a long way. But back then, I was 18, 19, 20 years old and I was going to do a degree in journalism, writing about capitalistic greed for Time magazine. That was my vision, right? And next thing I'm in the corporate world doing lines of cocaine in the toilet. So
yeah,
it just pulls you in like a vortex, and you say goodbye to all your inhibitions and all your ideologies and belief systems. And next thing you're just caught in this trap of lots of money, lots of drugs, lots of drinking, and just this excitement. It was just exciting. And so I was in that world really deeply. And the first few years of that was exciting. But then what happens is you start getting these symptoms showing up in your body. And the same thing happens with anyone that is clearly indulging in this extreme hedonism, which is actually happening to the planet right now as well. And what happens is that there's an intelligence in the universal design that says, no, this is not the path for you. And you start getting these symptoms, which are like red lights on the dashboard. So I started getting a lot of anxiety. My nervous system was shot to pieces, working like crazy on the trading room floor and out all night partying, doing drugs and drinking till the wee hours of the morning, week in, week out, month after month. So I started getting these extreme symptoms showing up, and I ignored those symptoms, not knowing what they were. I just was getting more and more anxious, more and more panic attacks, more and more depression. But I didn't know that. You just normalized to it. And again, that's happening to humanity. We're normalizing to being really messed up. And before long, what happened was it was a full-blown nervous breakdown. I woke up one morning to go to work and was pretty wrecked, and I just collapsed on my bathroom floor. I had a sharp pain in my heart. I couldn't see. My vision went all blurry. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to go to the toilet. I wanted to vomit. I had a cold, clammy sweat, and I actually thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was on the edge of dying. And the thing was, I was so depressed and miserable in who I'd become as a human. Deep down, there's a knowingness that this is not who you are. And I just felt really, really dark about who I was and where I was going and what I was doing in my life. And I kind of lost the will to go on. I kind of had thrown in the towel at that point. But luckily I got picked up by my wife and she took me to the doctor and he explained that I was having a nervous breakdown. Now that crushed me. I just couldn't stop crying. I just burst into tears. And I was hoping he'd say I was having a heart attack because I knew that they could maybe fix that. But this one, it didn't have a fix. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it? You fix me. It's like, he sent me to a psychiatrist like an hour later, one of the top psychiatrists. I remember walking in and he had this series of plaques and certificates on his wall that professed how skilled he was in the area of the mind. And he explained to me that I have a nervous disposition, a stressful nature. He simply said that I have a stressful nature and I need to take pharmaceutical drugs, most likely for the rest of my life. It was the most crushing day of my life. A doctor telling me I'm having a nervous breakdown, then a psychiatrist putting a stamp on me saying that this is who I am by nature. And look, he subscribed some drugs. I went on them and I developed agoraphobia at that point. So I couldn't go to work. It's when you can't really leave the house. You're so overwhelmed with just the idea of walking out the front door. And so I'm at home and that was this time, just dark misery and a low point in my life. But I came across a documentary while I was watching TV at home, and there was a documentary about a guy that was a massive successful developer, property developer. But there was a tiny slit of that story where he was sitting in a chair meditating in a pinstripe suit. And he was talking about this transcendental meditation that he does and how he uses it for success. Really small part of the story. But it was like this light bulb moment. It was like divine destiny that had put me there in front of that documentary. And I immediately went to the Yellow Pages. Some of the young kids won't know what I'm talking about here, but I went and picked up the Yellow Pages phone book. We didn't have Google back then. It was 1996. And I searched through the Yellow Pages meditation and found someone that would teach me transcendental meditation. And that was a turning point in my life. Now, just to fast forward the story, I learned to meditate and it was an absolute game changer. All those anomalies went away. I went off the drugs, stopped seeing the psychiatrist. And I'm not saying to anyone they should do this or not, but this is what I did. And I meditated twice a day and all of those anomalies went away. I went back into that job for actually 16 more years, the same job, the same clients, the same company, which concluded a 26-year career as a broker. And the last 16 years, after the first 10 years of being an insane, out of control, hedonistic broker, were much more regulated, less stress response, no drinking, no drugs, and actually became, one of the more successful brokers in the industry and left that eventually to teach meditation.
Wow. First of all, thank you for sharing that. It's an unbelievable story. And it's one that kind of no matter who you are, as long as you've been working for a while and having responsibility, you can relate to, right? And I think, there's things right away that jump out at me, like, when you talk about a nervous breakdown, I've heard that word so many times, but I haven't connected it to sort of the literal, like, like your autonomic nervous system, which certainly as a fitness person I've heard tons about. Your HRV, your heart rate variability, your resting heart rate, your breath rate, your oxidation of your blood. All that stuff kind of leads into, this is like, I hate to say the word cutting edge because it's been around for thousands of years, but this is what the leading people in physiology are doing right now is breath work and meditation and cold plunge and sauna, and those things inform the nervous system. And I just had never put that together with a nervous breakdown before. I just thought it was an old word that people used. Do you track any metrics like that now, or have you ever kind of looked at your sort of autonomic fight or flight type stuff?
It's really interesting. I think we're on the cusp of some really big science, like you said, where I think we're going to see a lot more technology move into this space of really tracking and inspiring a regulation of the nervous system. We look at things like, our breath rate and pulse rate and all that, but it's very difficult to measure your nervous system. We only can measure it by these side metrics, like you said, and that's like the Apple Watch and things like that. But I hopefully at some point we'll develop a technology that really tests the state of the nervous system. It's a really difficult thing, I think, to measure. But just on that, like you said, I was watching this movie, I think it's on Netflix or Amazon. It's called 13 Alive. And it's about those 13 soccer players in Thailand that were stuck in the cave. And they were there for 2 weeks in a very small space, in a dark place, no light, no food, no water, nothing. And when the divers first got to them, they popped up out of the water because the caves are flooded, and they had to scuba dive there for 5 hours just to get to the boys, and then another 5 hours back. And they popped up and they said, "Wow, you're all alive. I mean, how did you all stay alive?" And the interesting thing, the first thing one of the kids said was, it was our coach. He taught us to meditate. And It kind of gave me goosebumps when I saw that. It was like, wow, like these kids would have been in absolute fight, flight, absolute panic, which have been churning through their adrenal, cortisol, their supplies. And this coach managed to regulate their nervous system to the point where they could sustain long periods of time without food in a state of deep calm. And so it says a lot about the power we've got when we start to learn how we can regulate the body rather than the body regulate us, or the mind regulate us.
That's fascinating. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up that you have a movie, The Portal, as well as a book. Maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your film and how you got involved in that project and where folks can find it.
I went through crisis, and I had a huge transformation because of the crisis. Crisis was integral in my pivot in life. And I started to think a lot more about this, and I started to see that crisis plays an integral role in a bifurcation point where things either break down or break through. And in engineering terms, it's that point where they're measuring the concrete in a bridge or the steel in a beam. And it has this, they put it under extreme pressure, and they wait till it gets to a particular point where it either breaks down. And it's, we as humans are moving towards a bifurcation point. And I could see that I had one. Now that bifurcation point in Sanskrit, it's got a word called Rashi, R-A-S-H-I. And Rashi is a fork in the road where we can't keep doing the same thing. So it could be a relationship that breaks down or breaks through. A company breaks down or breaks through. A civilization breaks down or breaks through. And so I realized that this was a really powerful message I wanted to get out to the world. So we made a film called The Portal, which is really looking at crisis and how we got 6 stories that all went through their own crisis. And they used meditation and mindfulness as a mechanism to help them shift and expand out of their situation and break through. So we look at it through the macro perspective of 3 futurists that look at humanity on its impending crisis that will see us break down or break through. That could be existential risk to us as a species, which is actually, after doing a lot of research into the film, a high probability for humanity, a very, very high probability. And I'm not just talking about some flippant statement. It's talking with major venture capitalists that are investing billions of dollars of trying to prevent existential risk to humanity, climate scientists and AI specialists and environmental specialists. So there's a lot of things that are facing us as a major risk. But looking individually, that each human being that goes through a cataclysmic event should be able to see that as a mechanism for transformation rather than a process of being victimized. And when we feel victimized by crisis, it keeps us in that recurring state of experiencing crisis, whether it happened 15 years ago or 3 months ago. And I've known some people that still relive their crisis, even though they're 30, 40 years later. And what we're looking at is how can we see that as a way for you to liberate yourself and to grow and evolve into being a fuller person. So that's where the film and the book got inspired by.
That's fascinating. And had you done anything in entertainment previous to that? I mean, I know you're an author, but what was that experience like, learning those skills kind of on the fly, or how did this come about for you? Just kind of the machinations of it.
Yeah, it was brutal, to be honest with you, just
I
to
bet.
let anyone know. There's not a fairy tale story in this. This was some of the hardest things I've ever done. I remember a couple of people involved in the film. I sort of started the project with a mate, and we were Googling what comes higher up in the org chart. Is it the producer or the director or the executive producer? We had no idea, right?
Uh-huh.
So we did invite some advisors to come on and mentor us who were in the film industry in Australia. So we had a couple of advisors. It was kind of 3 stages, and it was very difficult. One stage was raising capital. That was, we had to have a really good presentation and raise funds to make the project. Then we had to make the project, and now we're in phase 3, which is actually selling the project and making people be aware of the project. And that's actually every single step of the way, all 3 stages of that. None of them have been easy. They're all actually been quite challenging. And, even now trying to find the right formulas for paid ads and, finding ambassadors or finding distributors. It's a really, like anything that you're new to, it's the first time round, you're sort of clutching at straws and trying to wing it along the way and make a lot of mistakes as well.
Sure. And just because we're here, where can folks find it, or how can we learn more?
They can go to Enter the Portal, ENTER, Enter the Portal. The portal is all about, it's a little bit sci-fi, and I kind of wish I'd changed the name. Too late now. But the portal is about the pathway through to stillness and silence. What is the gate? That's the gateway, and that's meditation and mindfulness. So entertheportal.com, they'll find everything there.
That's awesome. So going back to your journey, in your write-up and in the research that I found, I hear mention of Eastern practitioners and philosophers, and you didn't use the word gurus, but I thought it. And so please tell me that somewhere in your story, there's a mountain that you had to climb in order to meet a guru or a practitioner. Was there any endeavor or deal that you had to go through to learn some level of teaching, or am I just romanticizing it in my head?
No, there's definitely a mountain to climb. To become, firstly, to learn meditation. Like I said, I pulled out the Yellow Pages and looked up the local center and went to Transcendence Meditation Center in Sydney, and I learned from a great teacher there who was actually American and living in Australia. And he was really a guiding light in my journey, which was phenomenal. But I was so inspired by the experience. It was literally a game changer. It changed overnight. And so I went deep into Eastern philosophy. I ended up going to India and studying what's called the Vedas, which is a body of knowledge that not just the technique of meditation was born from, but a deep mountain of wisdom and knowledge about the science of the body, the science of architecture, the science of life itself, spirituality. And so I studied there in India. I did a lot of studies here in Australia, and, have been under quite a few different masters. And let's just use the word guru. So we want to take the word guru in its truest form, which is gu is darkness and ru is remover. So the remover of darkness, someone that helps dispel the darkness and bring luminosity to your experience of life.
Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. I'm super excited that today's show is brought to you by the Global School of Entrepreneurship. Most practicing entrepreneurs cannot take 2 years away from their growing business to attend a full-time campus-based program or spend every weekend away from family and business for a couple of years. Finally, there's an accredited program specifically designed for you to work on and grow your business while completing your MBA. The GSE MBA complements the needs and schedules of someone actively engaged in an entrepreneurial venture while still covering the accredited curriculum expected from any MBA program. The Global School of Entrepreneurship offers a unique offering called the Mastermind to MBA program. It consists of 10 students who work together in a forum-style cohort and meet every other week for a year. The GSE MBA helps you develop skills in critical thinking and strategic planning. Students also develop competencies in leadership, decision-making, and communication with both employees as well as the important stakeholders in your business. You will be exposed to world-class academics and fascinating guest lecturers. You'll work on your business while working in your business. Students are guided by real-world entrepreneurs with decades of experience starting and scaling businesses just like yours. Best of all, I'm beyond proud to announce that the Global School of Entrepreneurship has agreed to offer one Spear and Clover listener a scholarship to join an upcoming Mastermind to MBA cohort. They are looking for someone just like you to bring a unique perspective to the program, and they are accepting applications right now. To learn more and to apply, simply go to www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Don't miss this opportunity to level yourself up and surround yourself with other like-minded entrepreneurs just like you. Once again, to apply for the GSE MBA Spear and Clover Scholarship, simply visit www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. That's fascinating. I've never heard of that before. And that's a word that gets thrown around a lot that I actually don't like, particularly the way it's used in America.
Likewise.
At least.
Yeah.
But that sheds a whole new light on it, Tom. Look at us, we're doing it. So where do things go from here? You've achieved so much professionally, and now as a ambassador for this wonderful practice and for this sort of entire fourth state of being that I think we've spent about 100 years trying to forget. It feels like,
and to that, it's so spot on.
Yeah, to that point, it feels like the 1900s, the 20th century. It feels like we spent 100 years trying to forget the old ways, only to now find, like through science and computers and diligence, that the old ways were actually right? Whether that's in medicine or, parenting or tribal communities, or certainly breathing and meditation and focus and mindfulness. Where do we take things from here? How do we get back to simplicity in a world that's so complex?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. It's so true. And I find it fascinating as well that we're kind of doing a full circle where we've gone into the furthest point of distraction. And I think one of the greatest and biggest diseases on the planet is distraction. We're so distracted from inner being. And I only look at the happiest groups of people on the planet, the most blissfully, calmly, healthy people on the planet. And they all have some degree of practice or due diligence into their health and wellness, and some point of surrender. And that's people of deep spiritual practices or religious practices, the monks, the ashrams, the monasteries, tribal cultures, where they're using plant medicines, they're using meditation, they're using prayer, they're using Ramadan or tapas or Lent or Yom Kippur. And this idea of surrender and service is so powerful, and getting back into simplicity. And when we look at the decadence and the hedonism of a lot of the Western culture, and we see the correlation between that and the highest levels of antidepressants and pharmaceuticals trying to make us be happier, is just ridiculously correlated. It's so absurd, and we can't seem to put those two together. So I think what we're doing is we're starting to see the reemergence, not the emergence, but the reemergence and the mainstreaming and integration into Western world. And this is a very exciting time because it's the first time this has really happened, where these practices of breath work, meditation, yoga, plant medicine, are all starting to integrate into the households of the world. Now, they were usually fairly renunciant or remote sort of practices, tribes in the Amazon, ashrams and monasteries of the Himalayas or the Italian and Spanish Alps. And so it's really exciting to see this proliferation of these modalities into the households of the world. And I think what we're going to see is a revolution and an evolution of humankind exponentially as we see this spread like wildfire. And we start to really wake up to the trajectory we're on and the unsustainability of it, and how there's an option and there's a path for transformation, which will really see things change in a big way. And I don't think it's an accident that things like that Marie Kondo, her book about minimalism and those sort of movements are coming out in correlation with things like people, more people meditating and more people doing breath work and more people doing, all those other modalities that give us a sort of better existence.
First of all, I think that's a terrific answer. And I, like from the sounds of it, like you, find that there's just no better alternative than to be an optimist, regardless. I'm probably more pragmatic, but I'd rather be an optimist. However, it's hard for me I know how difficult it is for one person to get past their ego and take an examination of what it is that they need in their life. And I know that it's something that I like to do and probably still see myself as failing at often. And I know that when I look around, there's so few people that value it over the alternative options at their disposal. And so the thing that concerns me is if Instagram and TikTok and the couch, Netflix, whatever is available, what is the program that gets more folks than not to choose the simpler, certainly healthier, certainly more virtuous and advantageous route over the quick fix, sort of very low on the Maslow's hierarchy, baser needs? How do we I always think of that 18-year-old kid who just turned 18 every year. It doesn't matter what we've learned because that kid's still got the hormones and he's still brand new and he hasn't had time yet. So how do we get them for generation after generation to continue to choose, the light side of the force, if you will?
I think it's twofold. One is, firstly, there's the carrot and the stick, analogy where the inspiration, which is what's happening right now. So we've got people listening in to this podcast. You're in Chicago region. I'm in Sydney, Australia. We're discussing these things, which never happened 15 years ago. It didn't happen 10 years ago.
Good point.
And the fact that we can have this discussion and people can listen in from all around the world. And that's the carrot. They're getting inspired and they're like, oh, I want that. I want to do that. I did a post the other day about my retreats and I put a couple of testimonials and this woman said, my goodness, I saw your post. I read those testimonials and I thought, I'm not having that experience right now and I want that experience. So one Instagram post has inspired a woman. She reached out to me. She's a very senior politician. She reached out to me and said, I need to meet you. We had a conversation. She said, my Instagram looks amazing. I'm on the media a lot. I look amazing, but inside I feel horrible. And I think you've got the tools and the techniques to help me live a better life. So anyway, we're working together now. So that's inspiration. Now then there's the stick, which is this wonderful mechanism called suffering. And suffering is such a great tool. It's not there as an accident. It's not there to punish us. It's not there to make us, experience extreme pain because it just wants to make us experience extreme pain. It's actually a mechanism for evolution. And everything in the universal intelligence is purely designed for this beautiful, loving, supporting nature to move us forward away from our distraction, away from our ignorance into waking up. And I always liken it to that intelligence being like an internal, loving parent, like a mum. Now, if little Johnny is doing something, she might try and inspire him to do, go to soccer training or eat your greens and eat your peas, live a healthy life. Now, if Johnny's mucking up, and let's just say Johnny's trying to stick a knife in a PowerPoint socket because he thinks it's good fun, that beautiful, loving mother is going to bestow some discipline on that child. If it feels, and the mother's only doing it because it loves it. And at some point, if Johnny keeps mucking up and not listening to mother and keeps sticking that knife in the PowerPoint, even though mother said, Johnny, I told you, don't do that. I've given you a couple of warnings. I've given you some experiences to let you know, called karma, that what you're doing isn't appropriate behavior. If Johnny keeps doing that, then the wrath of the mother will come down. Not because she hates him, but because she absolutely loves him. She will possibly, depending on what type of mother she is, she might smack him on the bum a little bit, take the knife off him, lock him in his room for about a few hours and say, look, you need to have some form of retribution or punishment or some form of message to let you know that if you keep doing this behavior, you will continue to get extreme karmic consequences. There's the stick. Now that stick plays an integral role, even though it might not be enjoyable. And that's what these symptoms or consequences can be if we keep mucking up. So either way, it's going to be okay. We're either going to get the carrot or the stick. So you get to choose. You want to be led or do you want to be pushed?
All right. So, Tom, I told you before the show, this is maybe the closest I've ever been to arguing with a guest because I love you and respect you already. I really do. I really am hitting it off with you. But I'm going to give you a little pushback here.
Sure. Cool. I like that.
And the reason is, well, two things. One, if you look at the sort of the structures of our societies, increasingly, the structures are being built. The stick is being turned into the carrot. It's like, oh, do that. It's good. Yeah, it's good to be out of shape. It's good to not pursue your dream. It's okay. It's not your fault. It's the system or the society or whatever. So increasingly, we're being told by people in authority, whether it's politicians or the media or whatever it may be, increasingly we're being told that things that are just objectively not good for the evolution of the species or just the species in general, you individually, are okay or in fact meritorious. And I think, I'm team Tom Cronin, but George Orwell would say that we're going to bifurcate, like you said, and we're going to end up with one class of people who's super evolved and totally gets it, and their HRV is 1 million and they're ascended, and another species of folks that are huddled around fires. And I certainly, or TikTok, and I certainly would rather take the Tom Cronin path. And I think that the carrot and stick analogy you make is good, but intellectually, to be honest, I do have that niggling thing in the back of my head of like, Orwell called that, didn't he?
Yeah, look, I definitely agree with you. There's no question about it that some of the least conscious people on the planet are actually the highest people in power right now. We're in the Vedic worldview, there's an understanding that there's these eras of time. They're called epochs or aeons. And so we're in an epoch of time called Kali Yuga, which is an age of ignorance, an age where we ignore what's fundamentally true, this inner wisdom, inner knowingness, inner consciousness. So everyone has enlightenment at their disposal right now. It's just that only a few people currently on the planet have bothered exploring that. Most of us haven't bothered exploring that. But the epoch of time that comes after this is called Satyuga, which is an age of where people realize that. Okay. So there's definitely a transition that we're in right now. And I'll use an analogy to explain that a bit more in a moment. But at the moment, because we're in Kali Yuga, it's clearly indicated and clearly one of the characteristics of Kali Yuga that many of the powers that the forces of, indoctrination and set up the structures of our society. So the education system, the political system, the banking system, the pharmaceutical, medical system are all created by very powerful people. And then we kind of fit into those pillars or those systems. And we're just kind of like pawns in that system. However, we can't wait for the people that create the systems to change the systems because there's no need for them to change the systems because those systems work for them. But what will happen in Satyuga and what's happening now is there's an arising of intelligence and wisdom in the masses below that are suddenly going, hang on a sec, that system doesn't serve me because my consciousness has changed, but I'm working and trying to exist in a system that doesn't align with my state of consciousness now. And so then they start to question, the first step is questioning the system. I don't know if that system really works for me. Like that banking system where you're trying to get me to borrow huge amounts of money, where you make lots of money, but I'm just in debt to you. I don't know if that works anymore. Like maybe there's another model. Maybe I can create some crypto, or maybe there's a media system where, you guys control the TV, the magazines, the newspaper, and the radio, but maybe that doesn't serve me anymore because that flow of information that you're giving me through those 4 channels isn't really covering the full extent of what's going on in the world. Maybe I'll create my own news system. Hang on, here's Telegram, here's Signal, here's whatever, right? And so we're going to see this shift happen from the bottom up, and it's going to take a while. And slowly over time, if everyone on the planet tomorrow woke up and not one person on the planet said, I'm going to drink Coca-Cola today. So if no one drank Coca-Cola tomorrow and they all said, you know what, I'm going to completely stop drinking Coca-Cola. Not one person on the planet drinks Coca-Cola. And they all say, I'm going to drink a particular water that has trace elements in it because I know it's going to be better for me. And they all demanded that. What do you think Coca-Cola would start producing?
Certainly would produce
water with trace elements in it, right? Because they're just going to feed the market what the market's now conscious enough to say, I don't want to be indoctrinated. I don't want to buy your bullshit ads. I don't want to buy a crappy fizzy brown drink. I actually want to drink something that's congruent, aligned with my new state of consciousness. So what we have to do is get humanity to shift first. And then from ground up, we're going to see things change dramatically at the top because our expectations will change.
Tom, you did it. You reset my optimism. I love it. I think you addressed my concerns perfectly. And for the listener, I'm not fucking around. I actually struggle with that because I am an optimistic person. And I always say people, I have high beams of hope. I often don't see the true picture because I believe it's going to be so great. And I think that what you just did was answer that question beautifully. So Tom, when it's all said and done, what is the impact that you hope your work specifically will have on the world?
I'd like to use an analogy that we use in the film and the book, which is actually borrowed from Barbara Marx Hubbard, who's a biologist. And we're looking at the transition from a caterpillar into a butterfly, which is a phenomenal idea that a caterpillar, this little slug, could actually morph into this beautiful exotic thing that flies around. And what the caterpillar does is a net consumer, and it's just purely self-obsessed. It doesn't really have any interest in anything other than just purely consuming for its own personal needs. And it just eats and eats. And it would ultimately eat the forest into extinction if it was allowed to continue on that trajectory without that chrysalis or transformation. But what's happening is that inside the caterpillar, it's consuming enough to build this transformation, and these amino acids are starting to accumulate. And what happens is there's these imaginal cells that start to form inside the caterpillar of what the future version of this caterpillar will look like. Now, these imaginal cells, the future version of itself, but however, in the caterpillar, these imaginal cells are actually very different to the existing cells in the caterpillar. And the existing cells in the caterpillar see those imaginal cells as a threat to the current status quo. And traditionally, what happens is they annihilate, or the immune system tries to reduce or minimize their ability to make that transition and change it from what it is. And that comes back to that hierarchy that we're talking about, where the people in power don't want the shift to take place because that doesn't work for them in power at the moment. So the imaginal cells get annihilated over time, and that's what we're seeing with saints, prophets, and sages that have ever represented a new status quo for humanity. But here's the interesting thing. In the caterpillar, as those imaginal cells proliferate, congregate, communicate, and gather and build momentum, there comes a tipping point where the imaginal cells get greater and have this capacity to overwhelm the resistance in the current status quo of the immune system. And this is the tipping point that we cross over into the chrysalis moment, and that where the imaginal cells now start to form the new version of what that caterpillar can be. And we see this beautiful immersion and emergence of this caterpillar into the butterfly, and this butterfly then emerges and starts going around propagating the forest and actually contributing to the growth and expansion of the forest. And so my work is really about being part, like you are right now, being part of the imaginal cells of the future version of the current status quo. And the more we share and gather and congregate and communicate, the more we embrace these modalities, the more we realize our true nature, and the more we normalize this, then we're going to start to see some really, really exciting things happen on the planet.
Brilliant. Tom, there's 2 questions that I ask every guest that comes on the show. Are you ready to have those questions now?
Let's go for it.
All right, let's do it. Number 1, Tom, if you had access to unlimited financial capital to profitably grow your current business and message, what do you think you would do to do that with that?
Wow, that's
money?
Such a good question. We're currently testing paid ads for our film, and I've learned some hard lessons on the film. We've spent a lot of money in the wrong places, and it was a really difficult time, and still is, just to be really transparent with everyone. And I would work on a better marketing strategy so that the 100 million people we want to see the film or read the book will be able to do that and know that it exists. The hardest thing with creating something great in the world is having enough capital to let the world know that it exists. And that's why Coca-Cola spends $300 million a year marketing their product. So that's the answer to that one, is have a better marketing strategy for the product.
Well, Tom, I've got good news for you. We can knock a couple of 100 people off of that 100 million here today. So we are doing that work, and at no charge either. This is my pleasure.
Amazing.
Tom, the second question is, if you had to give up this mission and your business as it is and as it has been, and try something totally new and start something totally new you've never done from scratch, what do you think that might be?
Well, it's really interesting. You come from gym background. And really strangely, my wife and I, just to sort of share something intimate with everyone, which we've not told anyone, so I'm going to tell everyone today.
All right.
We're looking at a gym. There's some really good gyms here that have really good business models. These 24-hour gyms where you just fob key in, low maintenance. And we see that for 2 reasons. One is, just for my wife, it's a great cash flow business that she can manage without too much difficulty. And secondly, we see that as a really good feeder into, not that I would be doing that because you said I've already given that up, but it would potentially feed into, meditation retreats and coaching and things like that, and bringing the body and the mind modality together. So yeah, I kind of got quite excited doing some research into the gym model. I thought there's something really quite substantial in that.
It's a great answer. If you ever do decide to do that, open invite. I would love to help you in any way that I can.
Thank you.
I know I've worked with folks in Australia. One thing I will say is I could introduce you to a dozen people who started in fitness and ended up in wellness and mindset and sort of this holistic approach to living and virtuosity. And it's so interesting to meet somebody kind of coming from the other end of it, which I don't think I have met yet. And so you, sir, are the first. Tom, before we go, tell everybody where they can find you and where they can get a hold of your books, your film. What's the best way to find you?
I think the best way, and they can reach out to me anytime. I respond personally to all my messages on Instagram at Tom Cronin, just all one word. And my website is tomcronin.com, all one word as well there. So those two places are probably the starting point to have their journey with me.
Tom, this has been a delightful conversation. I have learned from you. I have enjoyed everything that you've brought to the podcast. I genuinely thank you for coming on today. It's been an honor.
It's been a great conversation. It's a good way to start my day.
It's a good way to end mine. All right. Thanks again, Tom. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/spearandclover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.